Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. I'm your host, Gary Cinderbrandt. Really excited for today's guest. More so for the fact that we're sort of neighbors. Thought she was in England, so I said good evening when she joined. Actually, it would have been Scotland. But apparently right down the road in Broomfield, Colorado. So we're in the same state, 100 miles apart. But you do need to come up to the mountains a bit more. It's quite beautiful up here. I'd like to welcome Morag Barrett, CEO of SkyTeam. SkyTeam is an executive coaching firm that's had engagements all over the world and looks at executive coaching, I think, a little bit differently than most people are accustomed to it. But before we jump into that, Morag, first, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
I'm looking forward to the conversation, Gary.
I want to know who you were before you were this. You mentioned that you would work at level 3. That brought you to Colorado. Take me through, if you would, your journey to finally landing some years back on where you felt ultimately your place should be. Because most people don't get it right the first time out.
I'm not even sure I'm yet at the place I should be. And
Love that answer.
Who I was before today, it was the person who's here today.
Mm-hmm.
The what I did was different, but the who I am, it has slowly emerged over the years. So the potted history that got me to doing the work I am passionate about today is at high school, I was going to be an engineer. I like puzzles. I like to know how things work until a squirrel and a shiny object comes along and then I get bored. And so I was studying applied mathematics, physics, and economics, ready to go to university. And in economics, there was a chapter on how banks create money. And that fascinated me. I mean, I spent the first semester in economics going, what the hell is this all about? I don't understand. And then that chapter, how banks create money, you lend it in, you lend some out, you keep some for liquidity, just blew my mind. I loved it. So I made a decision at that point to leave at high school, not go to university, go straight into banking so that I would have work experience and I would do my undergraduate at night school. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I went to the Colchester Institute, 6 till 9, and did my banking exams. So it's nothing like that chapter in economics. But what it did do was to give me a deep grounding in the business of business, the what we do and the how we organize, the systems, the processes, whatever it might be. But I also worked with hundreds of business leaders who would all come to me, I'm just grabbing something off my desk, and say, hey, Gary, hey, we're going to be rich. We're going to make unicorn chalk skis. Will you lend me £1 million? And here's my cash flow forecast. Here's my spreadsheet. It's going to show we're all going to get rich. And of course, my job was to analyze all the ratios and the trend analysis and look at the data and understand the market and decide whether or not I was going to lend the money and at what interest rate, etc. And it became apparent to me that if it was as simple as having a good idea and as simple as creating an Excel spreadsheet, we would all be rich. And so as I continue to look at the successful organizations and leaders, I realized the missing part of the equation is not just what do we do, it's the who we are as individuals and how do we organize, not just internally around the leadership table, but also how do we interface with our customers? How do we organize with our communities? And again, not just on the good days when everything is easy. Everybody can be a good leader on the good days. It's what happens when the proverbial hits the fan and we're having off days. How do we handle conflict? How do we handle disagreement? How do we speak truth to power? Essentially, how do we work and ensure we're better together? So that was the pivot that moved me into leadership and executive development, initially in the bank with a UK focus, then leaving and joining an American telecom company in London. But that gave me a European and Asia Pacific focus. And then that move brought me to Colorado and gave me a global perspective. So 15 years.
What was your responsibility? What were your responsibilities at level 3 when you moved into that role?
Much as it is today. I mean, when I'm feeling a little feisty, I'll tell people, what do we do at Sky Team? We take the junior high out of the workplace. So the responsibilities there as part of a top class executive development team was to do that. It was coaching executive leaders. It was working with senior teams in high stake, complex environments to be more efficient, not just in the room, but especially when they went out to the room to build alignment cross-functionally or build alignment through their own function, and then designing and facilitating leadership programs with various topics for different people at different stages of their career. And that was a solid foundation. I mean, I learned so much, truly fast-paced, but with its own quirks and specialisms, i.e. frustrations and blind spots. But that was the foundation for Sky Team. And when I left and started Sky Team, I remember saying to my husband at the time, we'll give it a year and see what happens. And we're now rapidly approaching our 19th birthday. And so we've now had the opportunity to work with more than 20,000 leaders around the world. I've been to North Slope, Alaska. I've been down to Chile and Peru, gold mining, healthcare, medical products, publishing, engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, you name it. It doesn't matter the industry. It is the interpersonal people skills that undermine not just company success, but team and individual leadership reputations every single day. This stuff matters, and I love it.
When you were at level 3, did you kind of craft your own curriculum to just go in? Were you given a broad mandate to solve problems that were not clearly defined? Or was it a preset job?
No, we were building that whole mindset, philosophy, and approach from a blank sheet of paper. And so that, again, in and of itself is an interesting environment to be in. When I think about the startup leaders that I am coaching right now, it's a blank sheet of paper. They get to make the rules, shape the rules. They're rolling up their sleeves and getting into the weeds and tactical in one moment, but then also having to make sure that they're spending as much care and attention, elevating their perspective and being strategic. And if they're not being intentional and paying attention, the very behaviors that they are demonstrating every day with the best of intent, driven and focused on let's all get rich, making our Trotskys, it creates a culture that will either help or hinder for the long term. And I think that's what most leaders, even I, can overlook in the rush to get to a tangible output is, what's the impact that I'm having right now? How do people feel when they leave a conversation or a meeting with me? Are they uplifted? Do they have clarity? Do they understand the value that I see in them and that they bring? Or am I leaving confusion, self-doubt, and undermining others? And that's why this is so powerful. Many of us are just running on autopilot and not thinking about the ripple effects that we're creating.
In a corporate environment such as level 3 before they were acquired, clearly there's accountability and follow-up because you're still there. How do you transition that to your list of clients currently where, let's say, you're called in to do a keynote? It's not a formal engagement and everybody gives you great reviews and things really go well. But as we know, a lot of the times that's kind of like, well, it was wonderful at the time, but 2 weeks later, I'm back to the same old, same old. How do you manage that?
So that is something that I have been focused on since I launched Sky Team, because you're right, the happy in the moment, yeah, that's great, but it's a waste of money, it's a waste of your time if there isn't stickiness. So in fact, with Eric, Ruby, Jose, our team, we're always thinking about both how do we equip leaders so that there is momentum beyond the aha moment? How do we equip them with small habits? That's the other thing. It's not a silver bullet. It's the small habits that are easy enough to implement when life is chaotic, but powerful enough to cut through the noise and deliver lasting change. And you do it by setting that up in the program, designing those opportunities of both here are some suggestions, but also what ideas do you have to translate this and adapt it to fit in your environment. And by then measuring afterwards, not just are the leaders themselves more confident in their own ability. I use the analogy of driving a car. You ask a group of people, are you an above average driver? I'll stick my hand up, and yet I have gently scuffed, I think, most cars I've owned, which would tell you I'm not an above average driver. So in addition to getting feedback and impact analysis from the participants, we will also survey the direct reports and key stakeholders before, during, and after every event to say, are you enjoying being a passenger in this car? Are you enjoying the ride, or are you holding on for dear life and screaming blue murder? And that's where the magic's happening. I was just reviewing a program with a client that we have right now and looking at that stakeholder feedback, and it's phenomenal. Before the program, would I recommend my boss to others? No. 55% said they would, but by the end, 75% said they would. That is how you start to measure impact.
Interesting. During these programs, let's focus on keynotes for now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a common thread in the Q&A and the questions? Do you see across industries, or are they more industry specific, would you say?
Well, our sweet spot is with IT technology and engineering. So the highly educated, complex leaders, the double PhD type, who, very smart in their functional area, but again, looking at how do I communicate and get others on board? Isn't it obvious that this is what we should do? And how do I collaborate with the colleague who seems walled off? And so the questions that we're hearing, actually, when you listen between the words, it's I'm struggling, I'm running fast, I'm working harder, I can't keep up. Am I broken? And the answer is no. And in asking those questions and being able to provide those answers out loud, it actually helps people to recognize, no, this is just part of being a messy human. Nobody, despite how they may appear on screen, has it all together. And that when we hide behind this mask of, I'm fine, everything's fine, nothing to see here, keep moving, but not look at the underlying stress, anxiety, burnout that is festering, that's when it really does undermine leaders and teams, because invariably that pressure will continue to build until it explodes in an unhelpful manner.
So it would seem to me you're dealing with people of high function in one particular area, and oftentimes, especially in engineering, mathematics, advanced science, machine learning, things like that. These are problem solvers by nature. They become frustrated because they can't solve their own problem. You're giving them kind of a plug-in, almost an extension, if you will, into their programming that once it goes in, they're not sure how it's going to land. When they start to get the result that you hope for, do you think there's introspection that takes place? Like, maybe as a person, I'm a lot deeper and more meaningful than I thought? Or is it, hey, there's a fix, I'm just going to plug that in because I know in situation X, A, B, and C is going to work. Do you follow my question?
Yeah, I think so. So here's what I'm hearing is, are we able to provide the answer to life, meaning in the universe, i.e. 42, that there's a formula that if I do it every time, it's going to work? And the answer is kind of, but no. So what we do is provide very pragmatic, tangible first steps that invariably do deliver a result, because then that builds confidence to then step into the uncertainty of, just because it worked with Morag doesn't mean it's going to work with Gary. Just because it worked last week doesn't mean that it's going to work next week. But what the leader does know is that their toolkit and their choices is much bigger. And so they feel more able to flex in the moment and try. And I think key is that they don't leave believing that leadership is something that they need to shoulder alone, that they recognize that leadership is best done in support of and in service of others. It's a team sport. And so when you recognize that, anything that a leader experiences in our program, we provide all the materials and we just say, like, take it, use it, evangelize it, because the more that others use the common language framework and approach, the easier it is for you to interpret it and adapt it to meet your specific needs. It's not a secret song sheet for one group. It is the playbook, the operating system for all. It's just that I happen to meet it via the leadership cadre and then empower and delegate them to share it more broadly.
Let's jump over to founders for a second, especially high function founders, especially, with now what we see, the rapid development of tool sets that can output something that can problem solve in ways we've yet to see. Most of these founders are, for all intents and purposes, they're brilliant. I mean, they're coming up with things that no one ever thought about. But being a founder is a very lonely place to be. You don't necessarily develop empathy as a founder. You're not necessarily happy through others as a founder. So the first one's kind of an easy softball. Do you find most founders kind of fail when it comes to the CEO leadership role?
Yes, no, maybe sometimes. Am I allowed to hedge my answers?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I've seen with leaders. They are invariably visionary. They are focused like a dog with a bone, not going to let it go, just going to get it done at any cost. And that can be the Achilles heel, because what happens over time, if you don't align yourself with the who, you're going to be running on your own and running fast, and that is exhausting. But if you're alienating the very people who can help you, the advisors, the coaches, the mentors, the rest of your executive team, you're not building a team that will speak truth to power, as we shared earlier on. You're not going to create a team that will innovate to help achieve the vision sooner and more efficiently. You're going to create a culture where you have leaders who are going to wait for instructions and follow, and that's going to slow everything down. And I've certainly seen leaders who have a natural, I can't remember the word, but a natural tendency towards, I like the fresh and new, I like the blank sheet of paper. But once we get to sustained success and scalability, it bores them. And so I think this is part of the career for the modern era, is how do we redefine careers so that it is okay for leaders to move into the subject matter expert role, but not the head seat, or to exit an organization and hand over the reins for sustained success and scale so that they can go and do what they love to do, which is innovate, and then hand the reins over to a leader who really does enjoy let me build us a process and a system that dots the I's and crosses the T's and removes error rates down to a margin of 0.001% or whatever it might be. That takes courage and vulnerability for the leader to admit, this is no longer the right place for me, and also then to delegate and let go of essentially their baby.
Does it require them to recognize the delta between what they're gifted at and what they can accomplish, but at best, because they're not interested, mediocrity rears its head? Or do you find it hard to separate that from a founder that just wants to control everything? Because there are some things that I'm sure they're exceptional at, and some things, they can't figure out how to work the dishwasher or, go pick up the mail because they're just not functional in that area, but they still want to get it done. How do you get them to kind of let go of these areas that they're clearly not interested in?
Well, some of that is feedback and using tools like 360s or any other psychometric tool that gives an outside in perspective. And some of it just comes from slowing down long enough to have the conversation, much like you and I are today, around what lights you up, what excites you, what is, frustrating to you, what's keeping you awake at 1 a.m. in the morning. And then you can make an informed choice of, well, getting the mail, delegate it. For me, for example, I had to go through exactly the same at SkyTeam. When I started, I was a solopreneur. It was me, myself, and I. I designed the content, I sold the content, I delivered the content. I went to Staples, did the printing, and put the participant materials into the ring binders because we used ring binders then. Then, as my company grew, I had to learn that the Morag way, as right as it is, isn't the only way, and let go of some of that and understand, could I articulate the SkyTeam experience that I wanted our clients to have, so that Eric, Ruby, Christine, all of the others who work under our brand could deliver that 80%, that's the same, and then 20% with what makes them special.
Was that
And
an aha moment for you, or did you iterate towards it slowly?
iterated towards it. I mean, I knew that's what I needed to do, but it was a push-pull. So being explicit to my team as we grew around, I mean, I remember Ruby saying, how on earth did all of this work get done before she arrived? And I was saying, well, I used to do it. And of course, nature abhors a vacuum. So even once I delegated to her, my to-do list didn't get any less. It's just that it grew. And over time, things like graphic design, we now have a graphic designer on staff. We have a printer and a publisher who we send the files to, who print and ship all of our materials now. We don't go to Staples, we don't self-print. And all of this is a learning journey, both as a leader and as an
Okay, I
organization,
lost
because
you. I'm going to put
invariably,
this on pause, and hopefully we'll come back. I'll take this
okay,
out
we
in the
are
edit.
flow, but
That's okay. We're recording again, and I think, and they'll edit this for us. They'll know. We were discussing kind of how you iterated in this kind of push-pull approach, where you were doing everything, and then as you brought more people on your team, the everything just continued to replenish. There were
yes, well,
more things to
new
do.
everything's come in, and so I'm an ideas person for sure. And so the team love it, but they also now help keep us grounded because of the 100 ideas I'll throw up and throw out. They will say to me, well, which of those can we do? And more importantly, they will say, no more, we've got enough on right now. Park it until 2026. And so I love that. I mean, we truly do get to live the philosophy of better together here at SkyTeam. And it's at the heart of both of my books and the second book, which I actually co-authored with Eric and Ruby, because our combined thinking is even better than just the Morag thinking alone. And if more leaders could let go of the need to be right, to be in charge, to be the one in the spotlight, to be curious about the people around them. I think there are so many hidden talents that are left untapped that could be realized. And as a result, whatever they're building, delivering for their clients will be so much better.
Have you noticed that there is some form of correlation between the results you see with your clients and their level of experience, both good and bad, in their roles?
Say more about what,
So,
say
for
more.
instance, um, a lot of times when you're sitting and you're kind of contemplating a new idea, you have to have something to reflect it against. There has to be some tension that in this situation 5 years ago what I didn't know then, but I know now, I'm reflect back on it, I wouldn't approach it the same way. I would take this new idea that's coming to me and I would apply that. It takes a certain amount of courage to reflect on past experiences as you grow and think to yourself, woulda, coulda, should have done that a lot better. And sometimes that's hard for people to do. I think
Oh,
that's
I
where
would
wisdom
agree.
actually comes from.
I was sitting here listening to you and thinking, okay, when was the last time I actually reflected back on something I did 5 years ago? And for me, like regret, pointless, because it doesn't change anything. And to be honest, if I did do something different 5 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you right now because I'd be on a slightly different trajectory, which in a parallel universe I am. But that's a whole different podcast conversation. However, your point of we're about to embark on 2026, for example. How do I want 2026 to feel compared to 2025? And that's not just in the hard metrics of revenue, client growth, feedback, or whatever, but also at a human level. How much fun have we had? What's lit us up? What ideas are either languishing in our draft folders or just percolating that we want to realize next year? And then it goes back to intention and attention, being very clear about which ones are going to make the cut and making them happen. And it's funny, taking the time to pause, reflect, and be intentional about the next step you want to take. That feels scary because it feels like, well, I haven't got time for this. I haven't got time. The inbox is always filling. I've got to go. But the most powerful thing we can do as leaders is reflect in the moment because I can't change the past, but I can think about this conversation. I can think about the next hour. I can think about the next month and decide to what extent do I need to adapt my approach and game in order to have a more successful outcome.
Recognizing that your
Yeah.
approach and game isn't the same as it was yesterday or even the day before.
Yes,
So when we talk about being a work in progress, you're
for sure.
essentially looking at everything that came before. Now, 25, 26 as a fulcrum or a pivot point makes sense. What are we going to do differently going forward than we did before?
Hmm.
But I think that's at the heart of what you do. I think that's
Yes.
at the heart of change is we have to
Yes.
have the ability because for most people that let's say they're in leadership positions, but they're dysfunctional, they hate what they're doing, and their employees don't like them. It's exactly what you said. They're not paying attention. They're moving forward without reflecting on what their impact might be on the people around them.
Yeah.
So getting them to into a safe space, which is what I believe you do, giving
Hmm.
them an alternative perch from which to look, I think stimulates a lot of great things on the inside. Then you get into this concept of intentionality, which is scientifically proven. Intentionality comes through something in your brain called the reticular activation system, which can only focus on 11 things at a time. Meanwhile, you're doing the squirrel thing, which a lot of us do. It's not holding
Hmm.
our attention, but then you become focused as to what can I put in that funnel? And how can I get people to look at this with that degree of intentionality? And then it can alter that pathway going forward. I think what you do is incredibly valuable for
And
people.
that's what my clients tell me too is, and maybe it's going back to that desire to be an engineer and love of puzzles. One of the things that I know that we do as executive coaches so well is to hold this space to allow the leader to talk, to think, to vent, to calm down, whatever they need in the moment. But by being deeply present and listening, certainly I know my brain is connecting dots between what they said they wanted, what they think they're doing, to what they're blaming others for. And what I'm able to do is to ask the question that makes them go, oh, oh, let me think about that. That stops them in their tracks, but removes from the it's everybody else's fault to what's the culpable negligence. And if you truly want things to be different, then how are you going to show up differently in that next conversation, in that next meeting to change it? Because you are the common denominator. And as your executive coach, I can't coach anybody who's not in the room. I can only coach you. And if others aren't doing what you think they should be doing or you need them to be doing, then you need to be communicating differently or holding them accountable differently or role modeling differently. So let me understand, where have you either had success in the past or seen others have success in the past, and what from that can you adopt here? And ultimately, if you don't give a damn, to quote Gone with the Wind, if I'm going to be really old now, then stop BMWing, bitching, moaning, and whining about it. Let it go and move on. Because if you're not willing to do something different yourself, then nothing will change.
It
And
takes
so
a
this
certain amount of
comes,
courage, yeah, to connect the what of the
yeah.
outcome with the why.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it matter? And what is it? What are the actions you need to take to support
Mm-hmm.
the outcome you seek? Because that does involve introspection. It does involve having some hard conversations with yourself. And I think that what the impression I'm getting is, as you talk about connecting these dots, is the best answers always arise from the most obvious questions. And it would seem to me that there's a particular skill in not just paying attention, but being able to develop a question set which slowly but surely forces the people you're talking to come clean with themselves, to get to that point where there's no out, where they have to look inward because there's no place else to go.
Yes. Hopefully not in a cornered way, because none of us want to be cornered.
Oh, no,
And
no, I would say in a supportive way,
yes, because here's
in
the
a
thing. I
safe
mean,
way.
in our own research, so with the ally mindset profile that goes with our second book, You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One, we have the allied mindset profile. More than 1,000 leaders have completed it. And of those, here are just two statistics for you. Firstly, 67% say that their success has been undermined by the words or actions of a colleague. And I can dive into that a little bit above, a little bit down, but the majority of that undermining happens in the horizontal relationships with peers across the organization. So 67% are feeling, I've been stabbed in the back, I haven't got the support of my colleagues. And 1 in 5, so 20%, are telling me that they have no friends at work, to go back to the book's title, no ally, nobody they can turn to, not just on the good days to go, yay, Gary, I closed that deal, or on the tough days, hey, Gary, that deal didn't close, I'm going to miss my quota, or this project's going off the rails, what can I do? And both of those statistics are heartbreaking, heartbreaking. But it comes back to, if we're not focused on the interpersonal relationships, if we aren't focused on creating at least one safe haven at work, how on earth are we going to align a team? How are we going to align an organization? And that again comes back to the secret to success. It's the health and the depth of your professional relationships every single time.
I couldn't agree more. When I started in the business as a solopreneur, because that's what you do when you're 23 and you don't know anybody, um, without seeking out the advice and counsel of senior people within my organization who I truly admired, but also extraordinarily successful business people who I had no chance whatsoever of getting their business at the time. When you would go to them for advice, not selling them anything, if you were me, what would you do? That was some of the best wisdom and advice I ever got. It complements the person that you're asking. They have a stake in the outcome if you do something with it, and they want to have ownership of what you're doing. They're going to check back
Mm-hmm.
in. Ultimately, down the line, a lot of those people became my clients, and they said the reason was you were smart enough to know what you didn't know. And I said, well, I can say that every day because every day I'm going to learn something. As I get older, the volume of things I don't know far exceeds the volume of things that I do. But that gets me out of bed every day, kind of hungry to learn more and more. You know, you mentioned one other thing, and I'll share with you. this concept of being able to ask these questions where when I use the word constructive versus destructive, my approach was to create constructive self-doubt in my prospective clients. Not because I wanted to frighten them, but I would ask, a very simple question. Well, what are you trying to do with your investments? Well, we just want to make money. And my response would be, why?
Why? Yeah.
Well, because I do. Well, what are you going to do with it? I'll have it. Well, what's it for?
Can't
Not
take it
really
with you.
sure. So you
Yeah.
have a whole bunch of investments and they have no purpose whatsoever. I don't want to lose anything. How much can you afford to lose? I don't know. So we don't know what it is over here on the downside. We don't know what it is on the upside. Wouldn't it make some sense to figure out why you're doing it first, what that means to you, and then let's figure out what you need to do between here and there to make it work? And it
Hmm.
was like, yeah, that makes sense. That was my entire pitch, by the way, is I would take point A, you're here, point B, you're there. What's going to happen in between? And let's plot a course with a high probability of success that will get you there. It
Love it.
wasn't simple. Didn't have to pick great stocks, but it was when you look at your statements at the end of the month, do you understand why you own what you do? 99% of the time, people are going to say, somebody told me it was good, or I just want to make money. Yeah, those aren't goals.
No,
They're,
it goes
they're,
back to intention and attention. And I love
yes.
what you said there about as leaders, we are taught, even at, well, it's not as leaders, it is as young adults, we are led to believe that there is a right and wrong around being a human, being a leader. I mean, it's how our whole school system is built. Can you pass the exam? Can you graduate in the top X% of your class? It is me versus everybody else. And yet, when you get into the world of work, it is the biggest team sport, and none of us are the 100% experts. But it took me a long time as well to recognize, certainly in banking, the independence. I prided myself on being a good team colleague, that my boss could give me a project and I would go away and do it with the minimum of supervision, the minimum of input from others, because they had others that needed more hands-on management. It took me a while to realize no, interdependence is the secret to success. And as you shared, having the courage to ask for, offer, and take help, that is one technique for strengthening relationships, deepening my learning, and we all win as a result. But if we don't get to that epiphany sooner, then we see the politics silos and turf wars where my team is better than yours happening. And here's the irony, that 67% of leaders who tell me my success has been undermined by the jerks over there who don't get it, you go and talk to the jerks over there, they're lovely people, and nobody is getting up in the morning, except for maybe one person, but nobody's getting up in the morning to think, can I undermine Gary today? Can I undermine that other team today? They're all trying to do their best. And so when we feel stifled, disrespected, disempowered, disengaged, disconnected, instead of waiting for everybody else to go first and fix it, in both my books, we talk about the resources that empower me to lean in, to ask the question, hey, Gary, when you said X, this is how it felt. Did you mean Y? And when we do that, we cut through the misunderstanding, we remove the roadblocks, and we start becoming more connected and more effective as a result.
I couldn't agree with more with everything you said. And I so enjoy speaking with someone that gets my second voice activated because I come up with 15 different questions I want to ask you, and I
Okay.
could talk to you for another hour, but I know we both have other things we need to do. Morag, tell me a little bit about your books. How do people find you? What's a great
Oh,
client look like for you?
well, hey, here's one I prepared earlier. So this is camera.
You, me,
You, me,
we. I see
we,
it.
why
Okay.
we all need a friend at work and how to show up as one. And then the sister book, my first book, Cultivate the Power of
Excellent.
Winning Relationships. So available from your favorite bookstores. Please do get them. Or, hey, connect with
Audible?
me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I was
Okay.
going one further. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Say you heard me and Gary on this podcast, and maybe I can give you an Audible or an ebook version
Oh,
Complimentary.
I'm addicted to Audible. I think I might play that one for my
Oh,
wife.
and it's me narrating, so you get to hear this accent all the way through
I
both
love
books.
it. It's great. You have a
So I
very
will definitely
soothing
send it
voice.
to you. And then to learn more about our work, Sky Team, SKYE team.com, or subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. I write frequently, periodically, as the whim takes me, not
I
obsessively.
am absolutely. I am going to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'll point you to my Better Path Journey newsletter. You can look at that one as well. Morag, thank you so much for joining. It's so fascinating to
Thank you.
explore really where these inner motivations are, especially among the most successful people that we both have the privilege of dealing with. Thank you once
Thank you.
again. You've been listening to If the Public Only Knew. My guest today has been Morag Barrett. Check out her books. I know I certainly am. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.